seemed to have forgotten. At one point, he thought that it was important to not kick people out of their homes while there was a pandemic raging in the streets. And he seemed to have forgotten. He seemed to have forgotten that it is housing of individuals in this community that is more important than the short-term profit of those who will gain from capital investments in owning apartments and in owning housing. We are here to represent those who can't be here because they have to put themselves at risk to go to work with the coronavirus pandemic, and they need to minimize their exposure to the virus. This is one of the many reasons it is so critical that this community come out and show up and support those who are facing economic oppression and who are facing housing insecurity. Because this coronavirus pandemic has accumulated months and over a year of economic hardship. People cannot be expected to cover all of that losses in a short period of time through no fault of their own. Has this happened to all of them, and they do not deserve to be thrown into the streets. We're here supporting housing for everyone in Hawaii. Housing is a human right, and right now what that means is not throwing people into the streets because of the coronavirus pandemic and because of the economic hardship that exists outside of their control. We're all here to share our stories today and to talk about why this is really critical and very important. I'm Peter from the Honolulu Tenants Union. We're here with the firm, and I'm really excited to hear what everyone has to say and get this message out to the governor, because this could not be more critical. Alex, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Peter. Hello and salamat sa iyong lahat sa narito. Hi everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Alex, and I'm the coordinator of AF3IRM Hawaii. AF3IRM Hawaii is a local chapter of a national organization of militant feminists fighting to win the world we deserve. A world liberated from the violence enacted upon us by the colonizers, the settlers, and the ruling class. We as an organization of working class women of color understand the struggle to remain housed in Hawaii, a stolen kingdom where wages are low and housing costs are astronomical. We could not afford to live here before the pandemic, and it's miraculous that we can get by now during a surge in pandemic cases, an economic crisis, and a rapidly growing presence of tourists and transplants. The fake state governor has failed our calls to extend the state moratorium, opting to let it expire, leaving thousands of women, children, local residents, and families to sort it out with landlords via mediation. I don't know about you, but I have never had a landlord who wanted to meet me halfway, or even meet me anywhere. Mediation is meaningless to a single mom facing eviction from a bad faith landlord. Mediation only delays the inevitable. We need the governor to renew the state eviction moratorium while rent assistance is still unspent and women recover economically. We can't risk tripling the homeless crisis. We also cannot jail away the homelessness crisis. If Governor Ige is serious about homelessness and women's safety, he must take preventative action immediately. So where are we to go now that the CDC moratorium is being lifted? Where are we to go now that the threat of eviction is right around the corner? Where are we to go now as our demands to renew the state moratorium remain ignored? We go to take action, which is why we are here today alongside our comrades with the Honolulu Tenants Union to evict Governor Ige for his failure to do right by the people of Hawaii. Failure to keep over 16,000 women, children, our queer, gender diverse relatives, and local families housed. We are here today to have our stories, our hardships, and our demands heard.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, passing the mic back to Peter so that we can get with the program.
Okay, just want to make sure everyone can hear me. Awesome. We all know why we're here, and we've all prepared statements. What you could say could be short, it could be long. Whatever you have to say, whatever you have to contribute is absolutely incredible, and we're so glad to have everyone's voices represented here. What we're going to do is we're going to go down the line, have you come up and approach the microphone, give your speech and say your piece to the microphone, unlike what I'm doing right now, which is facing not the video camera. And then conclude, and we'll move along, and we can get the next person up. And at the end, we will all go up and we will post our eviction notices for the governor. Whoever would like.
Just one moment.
Okay, one moment.
Just make sure,
People can get by.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Say their name.
I'm Peter.
No, I mean when they report the talk, say their name. Their any argument. Just so we know.
Okay. If you feel comfortable stating your name and organization before you come up, you're encouraged to do so.
If not, that's okay.
Not a problem if not. Ainsley, would you like to come up? Or Nate, why don't you kick us off? Ainsley's holding the poster.
Aloha, my name is Nathan. I'm with the Honolulu Tenants Union. The message of the state of Hawaii has been malama the community, protect each other, and slow the spread of COVID-19. While they implore us citizens to protect ourselves and each other, they are neglecting to do their part. A community is only as safe as our most vulnerable members. Our most vulnerable members are the houseless and the housing insecure. They are among the most susceptible to the pandemic. We must do everything we can to make sure that everyone can shelter in place, regardless of how much money is in their pocket. Makes sense, right?
Yes.
To slow the spread, people must have access to shelter, food, and clean water. They must have access to hygiene. They must be able to socially distance themselves. If we are to beat this pandemic, we must malama each other. We must make sure everyone is safe from infection. But apparently the state disagrees. By ending the moratorium now, the state is saying we would rather put the money interests of the landlords above the safety of everyone. Well, the pandemic is far from over. The Delta variant has made the situation more dire than it was last year. Around the same time last year, we had 102 7-day average daily case counts. The 7-day average daily case count is 112. We have 1,060 new coronavirus cases right now in the state of Hawaii. Is this the right time to put more people on the streets? I live in downtown Honolulu. I see the conditions of my houseless neighbors, the risk they have to take to survive on a daily basis. I have seen people eating from trash cans leftover food. To get their daily bread, they are forced to consume the saliva of other people, potentially infecting themselves with COVID-19. Not to mention any other diseases. The state tells them to socially distance, while forcing them to choose between sleeping on the streets or sleeping in crowded shelters. It is unconscionable to subject people to these conditions, especially during this pandemic. Governor Ige, can you imagine you and your Ohio living like this? These risks not only affect the houseless, they affect all of us. Our hospitals are filled up. No more IC beds for you and I. The surge will only get worse as we put more people on the streets. Governor Ige, get your head on straight. Malama your community. Practice what you preach. Reinstate the COVID-19 housing moratorium or we will evict you. You are officially on notice.
Hello? So, I'm from the Honolulu Tenants Union. Last year I had a situation where my roof was leaky and the landlord refused to fix it for months on end. It got to a point where the storm flooded the whole house. The landlords, they threw us out. They threatened to call the police on us, change the locks on us. They threatened to throw our property away, all while we were reeling from the emergency going from hotel room to hotel room. This sounds wrong, right? Like they're screwing us over. We tried to access legal advice. We tried to use the landlord-tenant code, tried to use housing licensing laws. Nothing worked. Because according to the systems we have in place, landlords can do whatever they want and get away with it. It doesn't matter if the landlord's evicted legally, it doesn't matter if they're in the wrong. When you are without housing, you are scrambling. You cannot fight back. And they want to evict tenants no matter what. That's why the eviction moratorium is being rescinded. Because in this system, we are only as good as our labor and the money that we produce. This is a system built upon the neoliberal mantra that forces us to view ourselves and each other as individual modules of production. The idea that we must labor for and produce the means to buy everything in this life, from basic necessities like food, water, shelter, to land, social class, prestige, and power. This mantra allows predatory landlords and corporations to use the land they stole from Kanaka Maoli to prey on all of us, to divide us, to bleed us dry, to use rent as violence against women, against families, against children, creating desperate housing situations and causing homelessness. But we are far more important than the labor and profit that is exacted from us. We know this. We are humans who love, laugh, and care for each other, and we do not have to do everything on our own. We care about supporting each other in this pandemic, in this housing crisis, not profit or greed. And that is why I'm proud today to stand with all of you as we collectively say we need an eviction moratorium, we need rent forgiveness, we need an end to capitalism and colonialism. Governor Ige, you are sitting on a stolen house and stolen land in the Kingdom of Hawaii, exploiting the poor and working class people, and we are evicting you.
Aloha mai kauko. My name is Anuhea and I am with the firm Hawaii. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired. Tired of seeing my people displaced. Tired of seeing my friends moving away. Tired of seeing my ohana, my family moving away. Because we cannot afford to live in our own home, on our own land. And because of this displacement, look what is happening to our aina. Look at this gentrification. Yeah. Our land is dying. Ke li'i ka aina, ke kaua, ke kanaka. Aina is the king. Aina is in charge. We are its servant. We're not able to serve this aina because we are not able to be here. David Ige, it's time to go. Land back, bodies back. Eo.
Eo.
I'm Victoria, and I'm really happy to be here with the firm Hawaii. And let's start off with land back. He has to go. There's too many stories that I could tell you right now, but I'm not, about people being forced to do what they have to do to stay where they are. And those situations aren't really great. Housing is a human right.
Yes.
It is an absolute human right. You cannot be forced to do what you need to do to make rent. You cannot be forced in unsafe situations on the streets, living with people that you don't want to live with, staying places where you don't want to stay, working jobs, busting your tail to make rent. We need this. We need this. We need him out. I'm so tired too. This is hard. This is hard that our people will have to leave their families, leave their belongings. When you have nothing, you feel like you are nothing. We need to take care of our people. We need this eviction moratorium.
Okay. Aloha mai kākou, awau o ka ihilani ihu pani laskwanya no kanu hemai o. A ka ike manawa ke no hene o I manoa. Ke homana o ma kakula nui o Hawaii I manoa. Aloha mai kākou, my name is Ihilani Laskwanya. I'm from Kaneohe and Waimanalo, Oahu, but I currently reside in Manoa, and I'm a student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And I'm also a proud member of the transnational feminist and anti-imperialist organization known as Affirm Hawaii. As someone who's Kamako Maoli, it's a great privilege to be on this aina, to have been born and raised on Oahu Nei. But It's a deep struggle and a deep hardship to be on my own aina and not have access to secure housing. When I look at the capital, when I see that, that's not my capital. Over there, the Iolani Palace, that is my home and that is my capital. Although there can never be justice on stolen land, there can definitely be things done to lessen the harms in which Filipino and local folks endure. And I'm calling for David Ige to not just continue with the eviction moratorium, but to access is, I'm at such a loss for words because as Kanakamali, we did not know homelessness, we did not know houselessness, we did not know what it meant to be like to not have the privilege to be on our aina. Access or lack thereof to housing isn't just about having a place to stay. It's about gender equity, and we know that women and queer folks are the most disproportionately affected when it comes to access to housing. And it's so heavy, it is so wrong that a person with just a nuclear family gets to live in this gigantic house while other Kanakamali are struggling literally across the street. So this is why I'm calling for support from the fake state. I'm calling an end to all of the stupid laws and policies that we are faced with. We know that they're not there for our assistance, but they're to hurt us. And we know that the fake state benefits from every last Hawaiian getting to live on this island. We know that the fake state benefits from every single Micronesian and Polynesian and Melanesian person who doesn't have access to housing. We know that the fake state wins every single time a Native person has to leave. So I'm calling everyone today to stand in solidarity. I know this is fake. The state is fake. Where he lives is fake. That's not a home. It's not a house. It's literally the epicenter of evil and destruction and wrong. And so today I'm saying, David Ige, have a little oi, get out, or I like scrap. Mahalo.
Just gotta move a little bit.
Hello, I'm Sarika, here today speaking as a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, as well as the Honolulu Tenants Union. First, I want to state that the Party for Socialism and Liberation stands in full solidarity with the Hawaiian people's struggle for self-determination and reparations. In early July of this year, my small-time landlord, whose name was Karen, sat me down to have a talk. She told me that I would have 30 days from that date to find a new house, because she was going to move in her daughter and her new baby. My room was going to be a nursery, she said, gleefully. I knew her and how poor she was at communicating, and I said, I need to process this. Let's revisit it. I did some research, looked at the tenant's handbook, which a friend had pointed me to through the union. I went back to her that evening, waited for her to finish her TV show, pet her dog with her a little, and then told her, I have researched this, and I actually have a legal right to 45 days written notice. She became upset. Oh, so that's how it's going to be, she said. You're just being petty, she yelled at me. I tried to plea with her. No, I just want more time to find a place. I don't know how many places there are out there that will accept a person like me. I left my parents' house on the North Shore where I grew up earlier this year. My home situation was becoming increasingly violent as I was made aware of my identity as a trans woman. It was necessary for me to find housing outside of my parents' conservative grip in order for me to feel comfortable coming out and living as myself. The first person who called me by my real name was also the person who put me in touch with Karen. And I didn't know, and it was helpful, but there was a lot of discrimination against a girl like me. And I didn't know if I would be able to find a place in 30 days. But I was just being petty, right? She yelled at me that she wasn't going to give me a good reference and retreated to her room. We lived together. The next day I found the notice of termination identifying me by my dead name taped to my door, which I have here with me today. To dead name, aka Surika, tenant. But my dead name, the male identity forced on me by cisgendered people, is how she and the system saw and treated me first. I looked for housing, courted roommates, called landlords, visited crowded apartments. All the while, she became increasingly hostile and verbally abused me at home. I knew I wanted to get out of there sooner rather than later, before the 45 days were up. Had the eviction moratorium remained in place, it was expiring about 17 days before my termination of tenancy. It is probable we would not even have had this conversation. And if we had, I could have fought back. But I looked. Several landlords I talked with over the phone treated me with suspicion upon hearing my voice. This room is for a girl, they said, despite it not being listed as such. I am a girl, I said. You're a girl? I didn't bother visiting those rooms. Anyway, I found a short-term rental, good location, 2-month sublease. When I visited the room, the landlord, who was also small-time, behaved very awkwardly around me. When I, sensing her discomfort, tested the waters by mentioning there is a lot of housing discrimination against trans people, she brought up her non-binary friend to show she was cool with the queers and complained about having to use their pronouns. I am also non-binary in addition to being trans, and it rubbed me the wrong way. But I needed a place. I told her I was still trying to get my friend to be my roommate and might not stay there, but I really liked the place and would like to plan on it for now. Let's plan on it, she said, and we shook hands. Fast forward a couple weeks, move-in day, we had exchanged messages, but she hadn't replied to my last. I made the mistake of not going to the room in person to confirm, a very costly mistake. I show up on moving day with my possessions in tow to an empty house, but not an empty room. I stayed in my friend's van that night. I went there the next morning to confront the landlord. The new roommate lets me into the house, but the boyfriend soon comes out and tells me I have to go. These are nice liberals. I refuse to go. I start to yell until the woman comes out of her bedroom. A rude awakening for both of us, and literal for her. She has nothing to say for herself except that she was hacked, which prevented her from messaging me. It didn't prevent her from messaging the roommate she gave the room to without checking with me. When I pressed her, she said she thought I just didn't want it, that I was not that interested. And I know, and I told her that I know, that I demonstrated enough interest for us to shake on it, and for her to say, let's plan on it. The perils of being uncomfortable around nice, cis liberals. I was homeless for 2 weeks. I slept on a friend's spare bed one night and then moved to a shelter at the suggestion of a friend who was a social worker. Arrest Ige. So I could get connected to assistance, I went to his shelter. Conditions at the shelter reminded me of the time I spent in the various psych wards I had been hospitalized in, but with worse food and bed bugs and dirtier. There were people who had been there stalling on wait lists for disability and housing assistance for over 2 years, according to one of the friends I made there. The first person I met at the shelter became my housing coordinator. The day I met her and every day I met with her, she was wearing a Blue Lives Matter t-shirt. The first and only time she discussed housing with me, she told me my situation was, quote, not that bad. I was homeless while trans. I left the shelter soon after that. The next week I protested against police brutality at the courthouse for justice for I Remember SciCap, and I say his name here.
Justice for baby!
Justice for baby!
I led chants on the bullhorn while people wearing the very same Blue Lives Matter regalia as my housing coordinator harassed me with transphobic slurs from across the street. Is it any wonder I did not trust the shelter? Because of my relative privilege due to my race and class background, I was able to rely on connections with my family and friends to set up a temporary discounted tenancy and then move into a place. I am now housed, but it involved me compromising on my boundaries and could not have happened were I not born into privilege. But I do houseless aid with my comrades, passing out supplies and food to homeless and houseless people in Makiki, and many of my sisters on the street are not so lucky. My trans sisters of color, we see each other on the street and smile. We compliment each other's hair, nails, eyebrows, outfits. We share a kind word. But why are they fighting on the street and I'm fighting in a room? One night when I was still at the shelter, I approached a man on the street alone and asked him if he wanted the rest of my stew. He looked hungry. He eyed the food and thought for a moment, decided no, and called me a tranny. My first time hearing that word directed at my body to my face. It's usually faggot. I quickly left and walked the dark block back to the shelter, glancing over my shoulder. I am lucky. My sisters on the street don't share my luxuries of space and shelter. And why? We have the homes. The homes are not the issue. We have the money if the budget for endless wars waged to kill black and brown people abroad is any indication. We need to extend this moratorium. We need to cancel the rents. In order to prevent a crisis of mass proportions, we must cancel the rents and mortgages, or 11 million evictions will take place across the land currently known as the USA. An unprecedented crisis brought on by an unprecedented pandemic. My current landlord gathered me and my 3 white German roommates to talk about boundaries in the common spaces the other day. When I mentioned that my 4th roommate, who is black, prefers that people not touch her things without asking, my landlord remarks that she can be a bit territorial in order to put me at ease. I do not think my roommate behaves territorially. In fact, she is very generous and open with her time, energy, and material possessions. I wondered why she would use that adjective to describe her. She is not animal-like, or primitive, or any of the things white people generally mean when we say that word. I talked to my roommates about it individually, and we all agreed it was fucked. This is how they divide us. I don't know what she is saying about me behind my back, or could, perhaps that I am dominating, or aggressive, or any other male-coded adjective that will separate me from my cis female roommates. We are all women in that house, and we are all humans who deserve shelter simply by virtue of being human. We must fight for that future, because whatever this is a load of fuck shit. And I, personally, am fed up. I think it's time for you to take a bite, Governor Ige. It is you who should be evicted.
Great job. Great job.
Housing security. Coconut 72 looking for housing. We're living within a household of 1 bedroom and housing security for all. Aloha, my name is Ashley Ancheta Galakak and I am part of Affirm Hawaii. I'm speaking today remembering the first time I spoke about housing insecurity in 2016 as a college student and attending a rally here at the Capitol. 2016, 2021, the same conditions, yet a million times exacerbated by this pandemic. I want to say thank you to every person who shared their story, and I know there's many other stories that are out there and have been over our generations now before us, and I really hope not to come. Mass displacement, mass erasure of people has been part of this history. And as we stand in front of Governor Ige's, not mansion, just the place that he resides because he was appointed to continue these structures that continue to displace our people. And every day we will stand and we'll fight back and say what is right. And it is our right, especially as women, especially as people who have been consistently at the brunt of oppression, of imperialism, of violence, of everything. I thank you for taking the stand and saying, one, it can start with reinstating this moratorium. That is the bare minimum. What is to come are long-term solutions of giving land back, giving our bodies back for a safe place to be, to thrive, and to live on for generations to come. So again, no evictions. Governor Ige, listen up. All right. Thank you.
And I'm a student from the University of Hawaii, but was born and raised in Kailua, Oahu. I'm here to say that housing is a human right, and all Native Hawaiians and other communities of color should have access to a safe space and basic living necessities. Thank you. For being here. In a feminist world, women, mothers, children, our queer and gender diverse relatives have a place to stay that cannot be torn away from them by anyone, especially the rich elite. We strive for a world that recognizes that housing is a necessity that should not be denied to anyone, regardless of their ability to pay rent, especially on stolen land. We demand for land back, bodies back, and a reinstatement of the eviction moratorium. Nobody should go unhoused during a global pandemic. Shout out to everyone here for all of your phenomenal displays of power and vulnerability in your experiences, observations, and your presence today. Liberation is possible, and it starts here with us. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay. I just want to thank everyone so much for being here and sharing everything that we did. I think this was incredibly powerful. I feel so empowered just being around everyone else and hearing all these stories and knowing that we put this together and that we can continue to grow our movement for justice here. At this point, I think that we can all take our eviction notices and post them on his wall. I have some tape, and so we can hand it around, and everyone, put your tape up there, and then that kind of concludes, our event today. But again, thank you so much for everyone. I think we've sent a really powerful message here today, and we can all continue, to do our work, every day. So thanks so much.
some in the blue bag over there? We are still live on Instagram.
Oh, okay, awesome. You must save the dogs in the eviction.
Do you mind taking this?
I'll take it.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you for organizing.